Debate between Minister of Police Michael Daley and the Shadow Minister Michael Gallacher. If I could just, one housekeeping matter, if you could turn your mobile phones down to silent or off, that would be appreciated. I'll take this short opportunity to introduce you to our three guests today. Michael Daley, Minister for Police. Michael was elected to the New South Wales Parliament in September 2005 to represent the electorate of Maroubra, and was sworn in as a Minister for Police on Monday the 14th of September 2009, and as Minister for Finance on the 17th of November in the same year. Prior to this, Mr Daley held a number of parliamentary positions, including Minister for Roads and Parliamentary Secretary assisting the Treasurer, the Minister for Finance and the Minister for Roads. Mr Daley was elected as a councillor of Randwick City Council in 1995 and served as Deputy Mayor from 2000 to 2004. He's represented Maroubra for the ALP since 2005 after former Premier Carr retired from New South Wales politics. Before his election to Parliament, Mr Daley was a senior corporate lawyer employed by NRMA Motoring and Services, and he spent 5 years in private legal practice and 13 years working as a customs officer with the Australian Customs Service. I ask you to welcome the Minister. Our second guest, far end, Michael Gallacher, Shadow Minister for Police. Michael Joseph Gallacher, according to Google, has been a member of the New South Wales Legislative Council for over 10 years. He's the Shadow Minister for Police, Shadow Minister for the Hunter, and leader of the Liberal National Coalition in the Upper House. Mr Gallacher served for over 16 years in the New South Wales Police Force as a General Duties Officer in Highway Patrol, Internal Police Investigations, Criminal Investigations and Special Operations. Prior to entering Parliament, Mr Gallacher was a senior lecturer in the Police Services Professional Responsibility Command. He also served as a Secretary Delegate to the New South Wales Police Association from that branch. In 1996, Mr Gallacher was first elected to the New South Wales Legislative Council. He was re-elected at the 2003 and 2007 state elections, and in 2005 was appointed Shadow Minister for Police in the Shadow Cabinet. In 2007, he was given the additional portfolio of Shadow Minister for the Hunter. I'd ask you to give a warm welcome to Michael Gallacher. And last but not least, our moderator for today, Quentin Dempster. For those of you who don't know Quentin, he's a journalist, author and broadcaster with extensive experience in television and print media. Currently he presents 7:30 Report New South Wales, I think it's now going to be called, Quentin, formerly Stateline New South Wales at 7:30 on Friday nights. He's worked in the media industry for 30 years and has been employed by the ABC for 20. Before moving to Sydney in the early 1990s, Quentin was involved in an expose of police corruption in Queensland, which led in a large way to the Fitzgerald Royal Commission. In 2002, he won the Walkley Award for the most outstanding contribution to journalism, and is currently the chairman of the Walkley Advisory Board. Quentin has written 3 books: Honest Cops in 1992, Whistleblowers 1997, and Death Struggle: How Political Malice and Boardroom Power Plays Are Killing the ABC.
Still alive. Still relevant.
Perhaps you could adopt that to the New South Wales Police Force. Quentin is married with 2 children and lives in Sydney. I'd ask you to give Quentin a warm welcome. And I'll hand over to Quentin to moderate the debate.
Thanks, Peter. Good morning, everybody. Democracy is a wonderful and frightening thing. Frightening in the sense it's the responsibility that all voters have to take. We get the governments we deserve, so the saying goes. So it's our responsibility to inform ourselves. I've just come from a debate between Brad Hazzard and Tony Kelly on planning, and I'm delighted to be able to mediate on a debate between Michael Daley and Michael Gallacher on police and law and order. We all note, those of us who've been around for a while, that this hasn't been a law and order auction. There seems to be some more enlightenment about that and how gullible the public is about those issues now. So it's a wonderful thing to see that we matured a bit as a society, if that's possible, and as a competitive media, if that is possible. The media, of course, is sometimes prone to superficiality. Well, we're going to try to change that over the next hour. The rules of engagement are these. I'll invite Michael Daley on behalf of the Australian Labor Party to make an address for 5 minutes, and then Michael Gallacher. Then there'll be a robust exchange on discussion points raised by me, and then time for questions from you. So please think about pertinent questions that are in the public interest. I know the Police Association's got a long list on their shopping list, on their industrial and professional shopping list, but I really want you to engage on the public interest matters that are relevant in this election campaign. Would you please welcome Michael Daley?
I'd like to begin with a quote from your own association's pre-election commitment document. New South Wales Police continue to provide the state with outstanding policing in unique circumstances. Crime rates are at record lows, the integrity and performance of sworn officers is beyond reproach, and the public satisfaction and support of New South Wales Police is at an all-time high. That's the first quote. The second quote from this little passage then quotes me when I said at a recent meeting, over the last decade particularly, the role of policing has become more complex. No longer is it simply about conducting patrols and happening upon crime. No longer is it simply about prosecuting people who have committed crime. Modern policing is increasingly about intelligence-based, proactive policing. It's about crime prevention. It's about ensuring that people do not become victims of crime in the first place. Let's go back to the first quote, where you quite succinctly and accurately sum up the state of the police force. And let me say to you, you would not have been able to make that statement in 1995 when the Labor government took power. Crime rates are at a record lows. They weren't then. Integrity and performance of officers is beyond reproach. The integrity was, but there was a problem with perception and public satisfaction with them. How we got to here? Well, it starts with you. It starts with the people. You know that I go all around New South Wales singing the praises of the New South Wales Police Force. They are without a doubt the best police force in the nation, and I back each and every one of you against any force in the world in any field of endeavour. So it always starts with the people. Sum up the officers of the New South Wales Police Force in one word, I'd say you're sharp. It's a sharp outfit. So what we've done as a government is to provide a very simple approach to that, and that is to fund record numbers of you. Nearly 16,000 officers there'll be by December 2011. We've increased the police force at 4 times the population rate. When the state's grown in the last 16 years at 6%, the population of the police has grown, the number of police officers compared to population has grown by nearly 24%, 4 times the rate of population growth. And we've tried to look after you. We've doubled police salaries since 1995. We've delivered technology and equipment, tasers, load-bearing vests, thigh holsters, mobile command vehicles, automatic number plate recognition systems, $12.4 million of forensic upgrades in just this year alone, mobile forensic command vehicles, 3D IBIS matching ballistic system, scanning electron microscope, technology we've delivered. We've built or refurbished 71 police stations since 1995, built or refurbished 37 of them since 2007. In your quote, you talk about the categories of crime. This is your scorecard. 17 out of 17 categories of crime measured by Boxar in the major crime categories down right across New South Wales. Barry O'Farrell disparages that, but that's your scorecard. And it's measured by an independent statistician. You have every right to be proud of that. I am. And I have to say to you that I do fear for what might be a looming O'Farrell government. I do fear we are at the high water mark of policing, where we've adopted a strategy of growth and delivery. They talk about audits and restructures. Audits of police stations as if we don't know where they are. Restructuring of a police department, of a police force. We've left that up to you. What we do is fund you and your numbers and your technology and provide you with new laws. They're talking about telling you how to do your job. I'm a bit worried about that. I'm worried for your jobs, I'm worried for your welfare. When you talk about audits and restructures, in Liberal Party parlance, we know that means cuts. You know it, and I know it. And history is replete with examples of it. Greiner, Kennett, Maxwell Wilton, who worked for John Howard, decimated the Commonwealth Public Service. He's now advising Barry O'Farrell. So we'll keep working to look after you, whether from government or opposition, and I want to take this opportunity to thank you very much for the work you've done for the people of New South Wales in our term of government.
I'm the only Liberal, I think, in state, probably even federal politics, that's been a secretary delegate to an organisation like yours. It's also been a graduate of the Trade Union Training Authority. Comrades, it's an honour to be here this morning. And I don't say that tongue-in-cheek, because I have stood by the New South Wales Police Force every day, whether as a police officer or as a Member of Parliament, and my record is there. And I will not move away from that for one moment. Concerns I have, scare campaigns, and concerns about cutting jobs. Last few weeks I've met with the Executive of your association, I've met with the Commission officers as well. It's not about that at all. When I hear the Minister say this is the high tide mark, are we seriously saying this is as good as it gets? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think there are problems within the organisation that need to be addressed. There are problems in terms of the community's perception. And most certainly there is a problem where we can work with you and other organisations to tackle organised crime. There are 3 areas alone that I intend to focus on. One will be drunken behaviour, street crime, antisocial behaviour. It's one of the pillars that I'll most certainly be pushing very strongly. Secondly, organised crime. But thirdly, for those of you who are concerned about internal matters within your organisation, I am very aware of it. I hear the government talk about opening police stations. Since 2005, 65 of them have been closed. Michael's with me now, and I get on well with Michael, because once you're in the police family and you're out there, and I don't care whether you're Labor, Liberal, whatever, the moment you step into the role of defending our police and you do it from your heart and your mind, then you're a friend of everyone in this organisation. And he's done it within the context of his government, and I work with him on that, and I'll continue to work with him on that. Because at the end of the day, when you see us going hammer and tong at each other, it's not because we enjoy it, it's because we're trying to get the right deal for you guys, the best we possibly can within our organisations. When I hear the government talk about how good it is, I say to myself, if we've got record numbers of cops, and I'm constantly having them put to me all the time, where are they? When I meet with senior police and they talk to me about the difficulties that they're having with first response agreements, putting cars on the road, I ask the question, where are they? When I travel around country New South Wales, and I have travelled extensively throughout this state, there would not be too many major towns and even small towns I've not visited now since taking on this portfolio. Even as far out as Wentworth, Broken Hill a couple of times. I go to these towns and the community say to me, why is it we continue to hear we've got record numbers of cops, yet the station that's operated here for generations no longer open? Because the police are now working from their head station. Why are we victims? Why do we have towns, as people say to me, where we no longer have police? So in contrary to what the government says, I don't believe this is as good as it gets. I do believe we can do better. I do believe that Parliament, most certainly government and opposition can do better to actually start to talk the truth about what's actually happening. Stop talking about stats. I'm sick and tired of talking about stats. Start talking about what is actually happening in terms of the internal problems the police are feeling on the street, their ability to actually do their job, what the community perceives in terms of street crime, and their growing sense of being helpless and being unable to defend themselves, and the fact that they constantly criticise because they just don't know the stress that you guys are under and the workloads that are being confronted and dumped on you. Start talking the truth about what actually we need to start to address in New South Wales. Most certainly, street crime is very much part of it. Organised crime is an issue that needs to be led at a national level. We hear all this talk about gun crime. We're not an island. New South Wales isn't floating around on its own. We're part of a nation where if we have weaknesses in the chain, guns can come in, drugs can come in, unsavoury people can come in. And there needs to be some leadership shown at a national level to actually start to drive an agenda where we can start to focus our minds on how we can minimise the opportunity for guns and drugs and the like actually coming to New South Wales as they come in from other areas. And most certainly the organisational matters I'm very much aware of. Quinton, you mentioned frightening. You said that your open comments frightening, and you also spoke about the debate. I can tell you now, this is the only debate you will see in New South Wales where if the audience is not happy with the answers, there's the potential for the people giving those answers to be tasered. It is an interesting environment in policing, but one thing I can assure you, that both Michael Daley and I are doing the best within our organisations that we possibly can to get you what you need, both legislatively, but also equipment, most certainly support. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Since you're such a unity ticket you bipartisan guys on what you're delivering for our friends in the police force. Let me raise straight away a point that's been raised by the independent, by the Sun Herald journalist Alex Mitchell. He seemed to imply in his recent critiques of the police force and its relationship with government that it is far too cosy, and that basically the police force has been feather bedded through the influence of the Police Association. Number one, do you accept, what is your response to that implied accusation, and should we do something about establishing in the public mind through independent audit of some of the arrangements that go on? I'll get to those shortly. But the feather bedding allegation, which seems to be implied by Alex Mitchell. Minister.
Well, I was quite insulted on behalf of the police a few weeks ago when I read Alex Mitchell's column after a massive drug bust by the police. It was one of the biggest drug busts in the history of the nation on a Friday, I think Thursday or Friday. And then on Sunday we read in the Sun Herald Alex Mitchell saying, you see, this is the police force and the government making cosy arrangements to make the government look good just before an election. I mean, that is absolutely preposterous.
You weren't calling the operational shots, were you?
Well, I never do. I never do. The Commissioner will ring me just before or just after an operation is about to commence or has commenced to give me a heads up. But to suggest that I'd get on the phone to senior police and say, guys, work up a few more stats for me just before the election. There's I know you've been laying low on that coke dealer down the street. Can you go round him up for me before the election? That's an insult. I'm not insulted because as a politician, I get outrageous accusations thrown at me all the time, and the skin gets a bit thick after 15 years.
What about the feather bedding? It seemed to be that the association has got so much power, and that it has done deals on its entitlements above and beyond the rest of the public service, that you haven't protected the public purse. Well,
when I turn the TV news on and I see Scott Webber railing at me on the 6 p.m. news sometimes, I don't know that he'd agree that the association's got too much power. Look, I think the way things are done is entirely appropriate. The association is an industrial body that has incredibly enormous coverage of their members. They sit down with their hierarchy of their force, negotiate deals. When there's an impasse, they come and see me. We try and sit around the table and find a solution. Sometimes we do, often we don't. But I reject entirely any sort of childish insinuation by Alex Mitchell or anybody else that there's any sort of feather bedding going on.
Yes?
Mate, I'd like to see his evidence. There is no evidence from our side. He can say what he wants to say, but there have been occasions in the past where we have had different views, and we have a view now that's different. The Police Association has spoken to me, Scott's spoken to me about our approach to drunk and disorderly.
Well, we'll get to that shortly. But on the question of the union's power in New South Wales, and I know you're after votes in the election campaign now, but it's a question of your protection. If you're the Minister, and Barry O'Farrell said you will be the Minister, the front bench position will prevail in the transition period, how will you satisfy yourself about the expenditure on what you acknowledge is now the biggest strength the police force we've had?
Well, I suppose one of the advantages that I have, some might even argue a disadvantage, Quinton, is the fact that having such an intimate knowledge of policing, it has been my career before entering Parliament. It does give me an understanding of what is required on the front line. We do have differing views, and there are going to be some changes in terms of the approach that we take to government as opposed to the current government, if we're fortunate enough to be re-elected. But for Alex...
Elected. You're not re-elected, you're elected.
No, if we're fortunate enough to be elected as the government...
You said re-elected. Anyway.
Well, I'm good, I said elected. My apologies. But look, for Alex to make those claims without there being any evidence of it, nor did he ring and speak to me about it, put allegations to me. I thought it was a bit rich.
Join the club.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think I have an informant who said, Quentin, there ought to be, well, they're registered in my mind, and under the code of ethics, they remain anonymous. But this was the nature, and I haven't got detail of it yet. They said there should be, we should look at sick leave, pre-retirement sick leave in the Tweed and Far North Coast. The allegation seems to be that police officers who are transferred to those areas all of a sudden get sick and then they go into pre-retirement. If you had evidence, would you, incoming minister, incoming minister.
Keep talking.
Don't
interrupt him, he's on a roll.
Look at an external audit of sick leave provisions within the police force.
Look, this is the first I've heard of these allegations. I mean, you will talk to cops up there, and when you go to the North Coast, you speak to the cops.
It's a lovely area of New South Wales.
Yeah, but let me tell you, it doesn't start on a Friday afternoon when everyone comes up from Sydney and closes down at 4 o'clock on a Sunday.
The question is, if you had substantive evidence, you would have an external independent inquiry?
I would sit down with the association and have a look at the allegations to start with.
Well, why do you have to involve the association? You're the minister.
Well, at the end of the day,
this question
you're talking about a systemic problem. Right? You're not talking about individual cases, you're talking about a systemic problem, arguably of corruption of the system on the North Coast. They're pretty solid allegations.
Yes.
You'd need to ensure that they were investigated, yes, independently, but you'd need to also make sure that what was not happening was just cases 1 or 2 being put together and trying to paint a picture of a systemic problem.
Try to find out whether it's systemic. Okay.